President Volodymyr Zelensky led Ukraine in marking its Independence Day on Sunday, a milestone that comes 3.5 years after Russian forces invaded the country.
Прем'єр-міністр Канади Марк Карні.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney joined the celebrations, pledging continued support and urging deterrence against Russia amid ongoing discussions about Western security guarantees for Ukraine.
Ukraine's defense is critical investments in our collective defense as NATO members. Because if Russia's aggression goes unchallenged, it will not stop here.
Zelensky praised Carney's first visit as prime minister as a big honor for his country. The two leaders also signed an agreement on drone co-production, and Carney said Ukraine would receive more than $722 million in military aid from a previously announced package next month. U.S. Special Ukraine Envoy Keith Kellogg was also present. Zelensky presented him with a state honor, telling him, quote, "We need peace." U.S. President Donald Trump hosted Russian President Vladimir Putin last week in an effort to reach a peace deal, but it produced no agreement. Trump has also expressed openness towards security guarantees for Kyiv. Ukraine's prime minister said on Sunday she had discussed the Ukraine-U.S. minerals agreement as well as the security guarantees issue with Kellogg. During a press conference, Zelensky was asked about a Wall Street Journal report that Washington had denied Kyiv permission to strike targets inside Russia with U.S.-supplied weapons.
We use our domestically produced long-range weapons. And, to be honest, we haven't been discussing such issues with the United States of America lately.
Ukraine also received messages of Independence Day support from several world leaders, including Pope Leo, Britain's King Charles, and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Israeli strikes on Nasser hospital in Gaza on Monday killed at least 15 people, including 4 journalists, one of whom worked for Reuters, according to Palestinian health officials. Cameraman Hussam al-Masri, a Reuters contractor, was killed in the first strike, according to the officials. They added that photographer Hatem Khaled, who was also a Reuters contractor, was wounded in a second strike. The Israeli military said it carried out a strike in the area of Nasser hospital and that the chief of the general staff had ordered an inquiry. In a statement, the Israel Defense Forces said, quote, "The IDF regrets any harm to uninvolved individuals and does not target journalists as such." Witnesses said the second strike took place after rescue workers, journalists and other people had rushed to the site of the initial attack. The Reuters live video feed from the hospital, which was operated by Masri, suddenly shut down at the moment of the initial strike, Reuters footage showed. Health officials in Gaza named the 3 other journalists as Mariam Abu Daga, Mohammed Salama and Moaz Abu Taha. A rescue worker was also reportedly among those killed.
The US has confirmed the first human case in the United States of travel-associated New World screwworm. It involved a patient who returned from travel to El Salvador, according to U.S. Department of Health and Human Services spokesman Andrew G. Nixon in an email to Reuters. Earlier, Reuters had reported that beef industry sources said last week that a case of New World screwworm had been confirmed in a person in Maryland who had traveled from Guatemala. Nixon did not address the discrepancy on the source of the human case. The parasite eats cattle and other warm-blooded animals alive, and an outbreak has escalated and moved northward from Central America and southern Mexico since late last year. South Dakota's state veterinarian told Reuters on Sunday she was notified of the case within the last week, but complained that officials at the CDC weren't forthcoming at all about the information. Screwworms are parasitic flies whose females lay eggs in wounds on any warm-blooded animal. Once the eggs hatch, hundreds of screwworm larvae use their sharp mouths to burrow through living flesh, eventually killing their host if left untreated. They rarely infect humans, and treatment is onerous, involving removing hundreds of larvae and thoroughly disinfecting wounds. Screwworms were eradicated from the United States in the 1960s when researchers began releasing sterilized male screwworm flies that mate with wild female screwworms to produce infertile eggs. The USDA has estimated a screwworm outbreak could cost the economy in Texas, the biggest U.S. cattle-producing state, about $1.8 billion in livestock deaths, labor costs, and medication expenses. The U.S. typically imports over 1 million cattle from Mexico a year to fatten in feedlots and process into beef. The Maryland case and lack of transparency around it could also present a political challenge for U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rowlands, who pledged repeatedly to keep screwworm out of the country. Authorities have set traps and sent mounted officers along the border, but it has faced criticism from some cattle producers and market analysts for not acting sooner and pursuing increased fly production. For now, the sole operating plant producing sterile screwworms is in Panama City. New facilities in Texas that Rowlands announced in June would need 2 to 3 years to come online.
Some National Guard troops patrolling the streets in Washington, D.C. began carrying M17 pistols or M4 rifles on Sunday night, according to officials. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had authorized the troops to carry weapons last week. It follows 2 weeks of unarmed patrols since U.S. President Donald Trump declared a crime emergency in the U.S. Capitol. The Guard's Joint Task Force D.C. said Sunday in a statement that personnel would use force only, quote, as a last resort and solely in response to an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm. Trump has depicted the Capitol as gripped by a crime wave, although official data shows crime is down in the city. On Sunday, Trump claimed with no evidence that there's now no crime in the city, crediting his troop and federal law enforcement deployment. He's also mentioned intervention in 2 other Democrat-run cities, that he'd probably expand his crime crackdown to Chicago and possibly deploy troops to Baltimore. U.S. officials speaking on the condition of anonymity said there'd been initial planning at the Pentagon about what a deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago would look like. One official said the plans were part of the military's efforts to anticipate any requests by Trump, and that senior Pentagon officials had not yet been briefed on them. However, both of those cities report declining crime, with Baltimore reporting a double-digit decline in homicides in July that the city's mayor claims is a 50-year low. Democrat House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, speaking on CNN on Sunday, said that Trump did not have the authority to deploy troops to Chicago, calling it a manufactured crisis. Jeffries cited Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who said there's no emergency warranting National Guard or other military deployment.
The firm behind Dr Pepper drinks is set to buy Dutch coffee company JDE Peet's. The deal is valued at just over $18 billion. JDE Peet's, known for Peet's coffee and international brands like Law and Dow Egbert, is currently valued at about $15 billion. Keurig Dr Pepper is worth more than 3 times that figure. After combining, the 2 firms say they will separate the coffee and beverage units. JDE Peet's lifted its annual forecasts last month after beating expectations for half-yearly results. That's thanks to sales growth that defied already high coffee prices. They've jumped after volatile weather took a toll on Arabica and Robusta bean production. The Dutch firm has also warned that US coffee prices could jump this year as a result of Donald Trump's 50% levy on beans imported from Brazil. Keurig has warned that its coffee segment will see subdued performance for the rest of the year as a result of such factors. The firm last year bought a 60% stake in energy drink maker Ghost for almost $1 billion. It plans to purchase the rest in 2028 as part of moves to enhance its portfolio of drinks. Shares in JDE Peet's jumped around 18% in early Amsterdam trade on Monday, on track for their best day on record.
දෙරණ නව්‍යකරණයේ පුරෝගාමියා හැටියට අයිඩියා හෙල් විමාන අධ්‍යක්ෂක
那这样的话呢，就是在出现这个突发情况的时候，工作人员可以这个台风来临前的一个瓶颈期。那此次台风鉴于它的到了极，并且最高的时候也会达到大概1-2米的这样的一个高度，设施和旅游设施也是提前进行了一个加固，包括其防台响应，1000多艘各类船舶已经全部进入这个防台水域。那另外呢，由这个三亚消防综合救援、社会力量救援、海门救援等2900多人组成的36支应急队伍也处于随时待命的一个状态。